first and foremost, I just want to thank you so much, Rob and IBM, for supporting this event. It means a lot to us. In order to kick off, I just want to set the table a little bit. So, Rob, you are IBM's Senior VP for Software and Chief Commercial Officer. So you are responsible for all commercial activities and revenue for a $60+ billion revenue technology company. You've spent 25 years at IBM working across many different areas of the business, leading consulting, business development, software, product, services. Now you run it all, and artificial intelligence is, of course, the big topic for today and at the center of this discussion. Talk to me a little bit about IBM today and how that compares to the IBM that you started working at almost 25 years ago.
It's very different in the last 4 years, let alone the last 25. But go back 25 years, IBM was a hardware company becoming a services company. And now we're really a software company that also has a consulting business. And so it's very different than what it was even 3 or 4 years ago. We're now over nearly 75% software and consulting. So I spend half my time on software products. What are we building? How are we competing in things like AI that you mentioned? And the other half is on our go-to-market. We're doing expansion around the world right now. So thinking about different countries that we should be engaging with, working with governments. We've made big investments here in Washington. So that's how I spend the time.
Wow. So one of the things that we've been thinking about a lot is you're really on the front lines talking with business leaders, helping them conceptualize and focus on what their AI strategy should be, implementation. And one thing that has stood out in a lot of what we've seen is that there's this huge gap between urgency. So 97% of leaders in the private sector say that AI is an urgent priority, compared to 14% of that same group that claim they are ready. What do you think is causing that gap? What kinds of conversations are you having with your top customers? What are they wrestling with, and why the bridge?
I think that's a good representation of the discussions that I have. I like to use this phrase, there's no AI without IA, meaning information architecture or data. And every client I talk to, they're intrigued by AI, they want to do something, but data does become either an advantage or an inhibitor.
Okay.
And so a lot of the discussion becomes, how do you make your data ready for AI? When you move beyond that, I do encourage companies to be really aggressive. You need to kind of move beyond experimentation and have AI working in your company. Around the world in the last 9 months, 3 major use cases have emerged for businesses. First is around customer service. My view is every company in the world will
Everybody loves
be
their interactions with customer service. Are you going to fix this?
Yeah. Actually,
promise me you'll fix it.
Actually, I would say we have fixed it, but not everybody's gotten on board yet.
What do you think?
It's culture change is slow sometimes. But as an example, Bradesco handles 200,000 inquiries a month. Bradesco is the big Brazilian bank using Watson X. So it works, and it does it incredibly well. We can automate 80% plus of the inquiries. And then the other ones kick out to a customer service representative who's much more informed because they have access to data to answer questions. So this is today, which is kind of back to my point of there's no need to experiment. You need to get going. So customer service is one. Second is what I would call digital labor, which is really how do you automate back office tasks. An example in IBM, we've automated a big portion of our HR for things like job requisitions, promotions, salaries. We've gotten to 85% automation rates. This is available to anybody, but you have to get started. Third is code.
And your data needs to be ready.
And data needs to be ready. And third is code. For companies that build software, which at this point is most companies, you can use AI, you can use Watson X to make your developers more productive. And we view it as 30–40% productivity increase within a week, not within a month, within a week. And so these 3 use cases have become the dominant ones. There's many others.
Sure.
But when I encourage people to get started, I'd say just pick one of those 3. Your success rate is incredibly high.
Fascinating. Oh, so one of the things that you just said stood out to me. Be aggressive. This is what you're telling your clients. And I think that that's right in large part. But certainly all of the customers that you guys are consulting with and advising all across the world are looking out on the horizon and see some uncertainty as it relates to regulation and compliance. For example, the EU AI Act is the first real attempt to govern AI, and even though the framework just applies to European Union companies, companies here in the US and other parts of the world operate in the EU will have to comply with these rules. How are you helping steer large enterprise companies, your B2B? How do you help them think about balancing aggressive, decisive innovation with compliance, risk, and regulation, which is certainly top of mind?
We support the EU AI Act. I think they really got some things right. Things like regulating the use of AI as opposed to AI itself. To me, that's fundamental because it's very different if a company is B2C and is collecting personal information, targeting individuals, that usage should be regulated. But that's very different from like the use case I give where a customer is automating their back office. I'm not sure we need regulation for that. So this notion of regulate the use as opposed to the technology, I think is critical because we want an open ecosystem. We're big believers in open source. I think we're the biggest open source company in the world once we acquired Red Hat. And we want open innovation. And there are companies that are looking for regulatory capture, which we don't agree with. So we want open innovation, but you have to think about the use, how it's used. I think the EU did that well. Second was they focused on transparency. Are companies using AI clear sources of data, how they're using it? I believe to this day we are the only technology company that's published the data sources that we use to train our AI. And I think that's a big statement. Makes me wonder why are others not doing that? But it was important to us to be, we're going to put it out in the public domain. People can see exactly what we're using.
When was that decision taken?
4 months ago, I think we did it. 3 or 4 months ago, somewhere in that range. It's a white paper on the web, so anybody can access it. And it was our statement to say, we're doing things the right way. We're confident we're doing the right way. Companies that work with us can know that we're behind this. We also went to the point of indemnifying our models. So if clients use models from IBM and watsonx, we indemnify them, which means they have no financial risk to working with us, which I think is a big statement for it that we're standing behind it. So back to the EU AI Act, they were clear on transparency. We agree with that as well. They also talked about you need AI that's free from bias. You need to understand how AI is making decisions. We released a product called watsonx Governance, which is how do you govern your AI. So my point is, we're really aligned with the neighborhood that they went to on this. I'm hoping we get to a similar place in Washington. I think we will, because we want a free market. We want aggressive, open innovation, but we also want to prevent bad things from happening.
So on Washington, we're here in Washington, and we expect to see a report from the Senate's AI working group next month. Any predictions for what that might contain?
Maybe suggestions versus predictions, if I can.
Tell us more.
We want open innovation. So that means a marketplace of ideas. A lot of companies can contribute. Competition is really good for early technology. I'll give you an analogy. I think ChatGPT is really just like Netscape. What Netscape did for the internet, it kind of brought it to the public domain. But then think about how the internet evolved after that. I mean, it turned out that Netscape was just, the fireflies before the storm. And I think we're at a similar place on generative AI where we're just at the start of what is going to go in a lot of different directions. So yes, we should be clear about uses that are appropriate, uses that are not. But we want open innovation because if we are not open as a country, other countries will be. And then the US is going to fall behind. That's going to be really bad for the US. So I think there's ways to approach this. So those would be my suggestions. Let's be aggressive about innovation, but let's be responsible at the same time. Innovation and responsibility can coexist.
I'll end on a kind of big question about where this is all going. One of our speakers earlier in the summit made a reference to a quote that said, technology is typically less impactful than you think it will be in the short term, and more impactful than you think it will be in the long term. Do you agree with that? And what do you see over the next, let's call it 25 years into the future? So you've been at IBM leading this technology company for 25 years. Forecast out, do you agree with that sentiment, and where do you think we'll be?
I agree with the statement because I think it speaks to there's been a lot of experimentation, which leads to some results, but some poor results.
Okay.
And I don't think hopefully nobody's debating, will AI have a profound impact on society and business and government? I think it absolutely will, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer for that to play out. But this is why I encourage companies. You used to think about your strategy as I have my strategy and I'm going to add AI to that. I encourage them to think about becoming AI first. So invert that. You have to be AI first in everything you do. And if you do that, you're going to be hyper competitive. Same view for governments. If we're not AI first in our government, other governments around the world will be, and then the US falls behind.
Sure.
So I think we're at this moment where, to your point, it could take a while to play out. But if you're not aggressive now, you're going to fall behind.
That's great. Well, be aggressive, be responsible. Thank you so much, Rob Thomas, for your time.
Rachel, good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.